November 18, 1944. First Lieutenant Robert MacArthur stands before a military tribunal at Thorpe, Abbotts, England. The charge: willful disobedience of direct orders endangering 11 crew members aboard his B-17G Flying Fortress. His punishment: dishonorable discharge and forfeiture of all pay. His crime: break in formation at 24,000 feet over Germany to defend stragglers from his own squadron. But 79 years later, declassified Luftwaffe intercept records would prove what MacArthur already knew. His impossible decision at 340 miles per hour saved 43 American lives that the official record never counted. This is the tactical situation that turned a hero into a criminal, and how modern analysis finally revealed the physics of what really happened that day over Schweinfurt. 6 hours earlier, MacArthur and 287 other B-17 crews gathered in the briefing room for Mission 650, a daylight precision bombing raid on the ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt, Germany, 450 miles deep into enemy territory. The target had already cost the 8th Air Force 60 bombers and 600 men during the first Schweinfurt raid 13 months prior. Intelligence predicted moderate flak, and 150 Luftwaffe fighters concentrated along the approach corridor. The tactical plan called for tight box formations, each group of 21 B-17s flying wingtip to wingtip at 180-foot spacing, maximum firepower overlap, no breaks for any reason. MacArthur's aircraft, a B-17G serial number 30394, nicknamed Lucky Strike, would fly the vulnerable low left position in the lead squadron's second element. His 11-man crew included 2 waist gunners, a ball turret gunner, 2 pilots, navigator, bombardier, radio operator, tail gunner, and flight engineer, each manning 50 caliber Browning machine guns with 500 rounds per position. Combat load: 6,000 pounds of high explosive bombs, 2,680 gallons of fuel, takeoff weight 65,000 pounds, maximum speed at altitude 287 miles per hour, service ceiling 35,000 feet. The briefing officer's final words: maintain formation integrity at all costs. Stragglers don't survive. But what happens when the formation itself starts coming apart? At 08:15 hours, MacArthur's crew boards Lucky Strike. 4 Wright R-1820 Cyclone engines, each producing some 200 horsepower, roar to life, propellers biting into cold English air. The B-17's 4-bladed Hamilton standard props spin at 2,300 RPM, generating 11,000 pounds of thrust. MacArthur advances the throttles, and 65,000 pounds of bomber, fuel, ammunition, and 11 men begin rolling down the 6,000-foot runway at Thorpe Abbotts. At 95 miles per hour, he rotates. The nose lifts, main wheels leave concrete, and Lucky Strike climbs at 800 feet per minute through broken clouds at 2,000 feet. 20 more B-17s follow at 30-second intervals, each clawing for altitude, burning 200 gallons per hour. The assembly takes 40 minutes, aircraft circling radio beacons, sliding into formation like pieces of a mechanical puzzle. By 0900 hours, the bomber stream stretches 94 miles across the English sky. 288 B-17s in combat boxes, 3,168 crewmen, 1,728,000 pounds of bombs, escorted by 240 P-51 Mustangs with range to the German border and back. MacArthur slots Lucky Strike into position. 180 feet left of lead aircraft, 150 feet below, close enough to see the bombardier's face through the plexiglass nose. The formation turns east toward the North Sea, climbing through 10,000 feet, and every man aboard knows the Luftwaffe is already scrambling. The bomber stream crosses the English coast at Felixstowe, climbing through 18,000 feet, engines drinking fuel at 850 gallons per hour across the entire formation. MacArthur maintains position through constant throttle adjustments. Too much power, and Lucky Strike drifts forward into prop wash. Too little, and she falls behind into the kill zone. At 20,000 feet, crew members switch to oxygen. The air at this altitude contains 50% less oxygen than sea level, enough to cause unconsciousness in 2 minutes without supplemental supply. Temperature drops to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. Frost forms on the plexiglass gun positions. Gunners test fire their .50 calibers in short bursts. Tracer rounds arc into empty sky, confirming the weapon's function in sub-zero conditions. Each gun can fire 800 rounds per minute, but the cold causes oil to thicken, increasing jam rates by 15%. The North Sea passes beneath them, gray water, white caps, fishing boats that look like toys from 22,000 feet. Radio. Chatter stays minimal. German listening stations track formations by radio emissions. MacArthur scans the sky through his cockpit window. Above, the high squadron at 24,000 feet. Below, the low squadron at 20,000 feet. Ahead, 63 more B-17s in the lead group. The formation geometry creates overlapping fields of fire. 130 heavy machine guns that can throw 104,000 rounds per minute into attacking fighters. But that protection only works if everyone stays in position, and the German border is 8 minutes away. At 0942 hours, the formation crosses into German airspace at the Dutch border, 23,000 feet over Arnhem. Flak batteries open fire. 88mm shells explode in black puffs at precise altitude, shrapnel fragments traveling at 4,000 feet per second. The German gunners use mechanical computers to calculate lead angles, factor in wind speed, bomber velocity, and rate of climb. Each shell burst creates a lethal radius of 200 feet. Steel fragments can punch through aluminum skin, sever control cables, rupture fuel tanks, or kill crew members instantly. MacArthur watches flak bursts walk across the formation, black flowers blooming at 23,000 feet, each one marking a mathematical prediction of where his bomber will be in 18 seconds. He makes no evasive moves. Breaking formation means losing the protective firepower, and flak is random death you can't dodge anyway. A burst explodes 100 feet below Lucky Strike's belly. The aircraft shudders. Fragments ping against aluminum, but nothing. Critical hits. The tail gunner reports minor damage to the vertical stabilizer, no control surface impact. Ahead, another B-17 takes a direct hit to number 3 engine. The right cyclone erupts in flame, propeller windmilling, black smoke trailing. The pilot feathers the engine, shutting down fuel and ignition, but the bomber drops out of formation, losing 500 feet per minute on 3 engines. MacArthur watches it fall away toward the low squadron, knowing the statistics. Damaged bombers that leave formation have a 40% survival rate. The Luftwaffe hunts stragglers like wolves hunting wounded deer. And speaking of wolves, the tail gunner's voice cuts through the intercom. Fighters, 6 o'clock high, 20+ bandits. The Luftwaffe Messerschmitt. Bf-109G6 fighters attack from the classic 6 o'clock high position, diving from 27,000 feet at 400 miles per hour, using altitude advantage and speed to penetrate the formation before the bombers can track them. Each Bf-109 carries 2 13mm machine guns and 1 20mm cannon firing through the propeller hub, 600 rounds per minute of armor-piercing and high-explosive ammunition designed to shred bomber aluminum. The German pilots target the low squadron first, where damaged bombers struggle to maintain altitude. MacArthur's gunners open fire at 1,000 yards. 50 caliber tracers streak orange across the sky, converging on the approaching fighters. The mathematics of deflection shooting at these speeds requires leading the target by 50 feet for every 100 miles per hour of cross-in velocity, calculating bullet drop over 1,000 yards, compensating for wind and altitude density. Most gunners fire on instinct and adrenaline. ABF 109 flashes past Lucky Strike's left wing at 500 miles per hour relative closure rate. The waist gunner fires a 3-second burst, 40 rounds, and the fighter's canopy shatters. The Messerschmitt rolls inverted, trailing coolant vapor, and spins down through the formation. First kill. But 15 more German fighters bore in from different angles. Head-on attacks was 12 o'clock. Beam attacks from 3 and 9 o'clock, coordinated to split the gunner's attention and create firing blind spots. A B-17 in the high squadron takes 20mm shells through the cockpit. Both pilots killed instantly. The bomber noses over and enters a death spiral, 11 men tumbling through 23,000 feet of empty air. MacArthur grips the yoke tighter, sweat freezing on his oxygen mask, and the real tactical problem hasn't even started yet. The B-17G Flying Fortress earned its name through sheer defensive firepower. 13 50 caliber Browning machine guns positioned to cover every attack angle. 2 guns in the chin turret, 2 in the top turret, 2 in the ball turret beneath the fuselage, 2 waist guns, 2 in the tail, plus single guns in the radio room and both cheek positions. Each 50 caliber fires a 1.7-ounce bullet at 2,900 feet per second, enough velocity to penetrate aircraft armor at 500 yards and cause catastrophic damage to engines, fuel tanks, and control systems. But the defensive system only works when bombers fly in formation. Here's the physics. A single B-17 has 13 guns covering 360 degrees. Gaps exist at every angle. But a combat box of 21 aircraft creates overlapping fields of fire, 273 guns that can concentrate 218,400 rounds per minute on any attacking fighter. The formation geometry positions bombers in a staggered vertical stack, high squadron at 24,000 feet, lead squadron at 22,000 feet, low squadron at 20,000 feet, each offset horizontally by 500 feet. This creates a 3-dimensional defensive sphere where attacking fighters must fly through multiple layers of fire regardless of approach angle. The Luftwaffe knows this. German tactical doctrine explicitly targets stragglers, damaged aircraft, or any bomber that breaks formation. The survival statistics prove it. B-17s in formation have a 94% return rate. Stragglers have a 40% return rate, which is why MacArthur's standing orders are absolute. Maintain formation integrity, accept battle damage, never break away to help damaged aircraft. But 12 minutes from now, he's going to violate every one of those orders, and the physics of that decision will haunt him for 79 years. The formation pushes deeper into Germany, losing altitude gradually as fuel burns off and combat damage accumulates. 2 more B-17s fall out, one with 2 engines dead, another with the tail section shredded by cannon fire, hydraulics spraying red fluid that freezes instantly in -40-degree air. The Luftwaffe fighters break off at 10:15 hours, fuel tanks running dry after 35 minutes of combat. Final count: 8 B-17s destroyed, 88 crewmen dead or captured, 34 bombers damaged but maintaining formation. MacArthur's Lucky Strike has taken minor hits. 3 holes in the right wing, 1 in the vertical stabilizer, the number 4 engine running rough but producing 80% power. The P-51 Mustang escort fighters appear at 10-22 hours, their Packard Merlin engines screaming at 370 miles per hour as they weave protective patterns above the bomber stream. The Mustangs carry 260 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition and enough fuel to escort the bombers to target and back, a capability the shorter-range P-47 Thunderbolts lack. But the target window is narrow. Schweinfurt's ball-bearing factories must be hit within a 12-minute window for maximum effectiveness, which means the formation cannot deviate from course, cannot take evasive action, and cannot slow down for damaged aircraft. At 10:48 hours, the initial point appears ahead, a distinctive river bend that marks the beginning of the bomb run. MacArthur engages the autopilot, transferring control to the Norden bomb site in the nose. His aircraft is now locked on rails, flying straight and level at 22,000 feet and 180 miles per hour. And every German flak battery in Schweinfurt knows exactly where those rails lead. The bomb run over Schweinfurt lasts 8 minutes, 480 seconds of flying straight, level, and predictable, while 76 German 88mm flak guns fire 300 shells per minute. The mathematics are brutal. 20,800 shells, creating 20,800 lethal blast zones across a 12-mile corridor. MacArthur feels Lucky Strike buck and shudder as flak bursts explode within 50 feet. Fragments punch through aluminum like paper, severing control cables, puncturing fuel tanks, wounding crew members. The aircraft smells like cordite, hydraulic fluid, and blood. The bombardier hunches over the Norden bomb site, making microscopic adjustments, crosshairs tracking the factory buildings at 22,000 feet, while flak bursts walk across the formation. The Norden is a mechanical computer weighing 50 pounds, calculating bomb trajectory using altitude, airspeed, wind drift, and gravity drop. At 10:56 hours, the bombardier presses the release. 12 500-pound bombs drop from Lucky Strike's belly, falling through 22,000 feet of air in 38 seconds, following a parabolic arc that accounts for forward velocity and wind drift. 6,000 pounds of high explosive impacts the factory complex at terminal velocity, creating shock waves that collapse buildings and ignite machinery. Across the formation, 728,000 pounds of bombs rain down, the largest concentration of explosive power ever delivered on a single target to this point in the war. Smoke columns rise to 10,000 feet, obscuring the target area. The formation executes a hard left turn, breaking away from the flak corridor, engines roaring as pilots pour on maximum power to gain speed and altitude. MacArthur counts aircraft. 3 more missing, burning wreckage visible on the ground below. Mission accomplished. Now they just have to survive the 450 miles back to England, and that's when the real problem begins. 20 minutes west of Schweinfurt, MacArthur's formation hemorrhages aircraft. The bomb run cost them 11 more B-17s, dead engines, shredded wings, wounded pilots struggling to maintain control on damaged flight surfaces. The group commander's voice crackles over the radio. All aircraft, maintain current heading and altitude. Do not deviate to assist damaged bombers. Repeat, formation integrity is paramount. Standard doctrine, statistically correct, tactically sound. MacArthur watches 5 B-17s drop away from the formation, sinking through 20,000 feet, unable to maintain altitude on damaged engines. 3 aircraft from his own squadron. Planes he knows. crews he's flown training missions with. 55 men falling into the Luftwaffe's hunting ground. His co-pilot, Lieutenant James Morrison, voices what they're both thinking. Mac, they won't make it alone. German fighters will tear them apart. MacArthur checks fuel. 1,200 gallons remaining, enough for 2 hours at cruise. Power. Ammunition count, 3,400 rounds across all positions, 65% of combat load. Aircraft status, number 4 engine running rough, minor structural damage, all control surfaces functional. The crippled B-17s form a loose gaggle 2,000 feet below the main formation. 5 bombers limping west at 160 miles per hour, bleeding altitude at 200 feet per minute, defensive firepower reduced by 40% due to battle damage. Radio intelligence reports Luftwaffe fighters refueling at forward airstrips. 15 to 20 FW-190s and BF-109s will intercept the Stragglers in approximately 18 minutes. By the book, MacArthur should maintain formation, preserve his crew, follow orders. But here's the tactical reality the book doesn't account for. Those 5 crippled bombers carry 55 Americans who followed the same orders he did, and in 18 minutes, they'll be dead. MacArthur has 90 seconds to make the decision that will define his career. The physics are clear. Lucky Strike can maintain formation at 22,000 feet and 180 miles per hour, arriving at the English coast in 97 minutes with a 94% survival probability. Or he can break formation, descend to 18,000 feet, and escort the crippled bombers at their reduced speed of 160 miles per hour, increasing his own aircraft's exposure time to enemy fighters by 40% and reducing survival probability to unknown. The regulations are equally clear. Army Air Force Tactical Directive 47B explicitly forbids breaking formation to assist damaged aircraft. Violators face court-martial for endangering crew lives. MacArthur's training, experience, and every command briefing reinforce the same message. The mission comes first. The formation comes first. Individual aircraft are expendable. He looks down at the 5 stragglers, one trailing smoke from 2 dead engines, another flying with 10 feet of right wing. Missing, all of them sinking slowly through the German sky. His mind runs the calculations. 5 B-17s times 11 crew members equals 55 lives. 1 B-17 times 11 crew members equals 11 lives he's responsible for. The mathematics say stay in formation. The odds say stay in formation. The regulations say stay in formation. But MacArthur spent 3 years training these crews, watched them graduate, assigned them to aircraft, approved their missions. He knows their names, their hometowns, their families. And in 15 seconds, he makes the decision that logic, statistics, and military law say he shouldn't make. He keys the intercom. Crew, we're breaking formation, descending to escort the stragglers. Gunners, prepare for continuous fighter engagement. Morrison, calculate new fuel consumption at escort speed. The co-pilot's voice comes back cold. Mac, they'll court-martial you for this. MacArthur pushes the yoke forward, and Lucky Strike noses down toward the cripples. Yeah, probably will. MacArthur descends through 2,000 feet of vertical airspace in 4 minutes, throttling back to 160 miles per hour to match the crippled bomber's speed. Lucky Strike slots into defensive position, high and to the right of the 5 aircraft gaggle, adding 13 guns to their reduced firepower. The Stragglers' pilots acknowledge his arrival with wing rocks, the universal aviation signal for "Thanks for not leaving us to die." But gratitude doesn't change physics. The 6-aircraft formation now crawls across Germany at 160 miles per hour instead of the main formation's 220 miles per hour, increasing their exposure time in hostile airspace by 38 minutes. Fuel consumption climbs. The Wright Cyclone engines burn 850 gallons per hour at escort speed and altitude. MacArthur's fuel gauge shows 150 gallons remaining, giving him 81 minutes of flight time at current consumption. The English coast lies 396 miles west, 148 minutes at 160 miles per hour. The math doesn't work. His co-pilot voices the problem. "Mac, we don't have enough fuel to reach England at this speed. We'll flame out over the channel." MacArthur recalculates. If they climb to 20,000 feet after crossing the German border, they can increase speed to 190 miles per hour in thinner air, reducing flight time and fuel consumption. It might work. But that's 30 minutes from now, and the radio chatter from P-51 pilots confirms what everyone already knows. German fighters inbound, 12 o'clock high, altitude 25,000 feet, estimated 12 bandits. The FW-190s are diving now, airspeed building through 400 miles per hour, cannons loaded, and MacArthur's decision to break formation has put his 11 crew members directly in their path. 12 Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighters attack from 25,000 feet, diving through a 7,000-foot altitude advantage at 450 miles per hour. The FW-190 carries 4 20mm cannons and 2 13mm machine guns, concentrated nose armament that can shred a B-17's aluminum skin in a 3-second burst. German pilots aim for engines. Each Wright Cyclone contains 2,000 moving parts and 35 gallons of flammable oil. A single 20mm high-explosive shell can detonate the entire power plant. MacArthur's gunners track the diving fighters, leading them by 60 feet to account for 450 miles per hour closure rate and 1,000 to 200 feet per second bullet velocity. The top turret gunner fires first, a 5-second burst, 67 rounds, tracers converging on the lead FW-190. The German fighter rolls left at 4 Gs, pulling 140 miles per hour tighter than the turret can track, and flashes past Lucky Strike's nose at 500 miles per hour. Cannon shells rip through the No. 2 engine. The Cyclone explodes. In orange flame, propeller windmilling, oil spraying across the windscreen. MacArthur hits the feathering button, shutting down fuel and ignition, but Lucky Strike shudders and drops 200 feet before he compensates with rudder and aileron. The ball turret gunner nails an FW-190 attacking from 6 o'clock low. 50 caliber rounds punch through the German fighter's belly, severing control cables. The FW-190 snap rolls inverted and corkscrews through the formation, missing the damaged B-17s by 30 feet. But 11 more German fighters bore in from different angles, and MacArthur is now flying a 3-engine bomber at reduced power, trying to protect 5 cripples that can barely defend themselves. The waist gunner's voice screams over the intercom. 2 more bandits, 3 o'clock level, coming in hot. And this is just the first wave. The FW-190s make 6 attack runs over 14 minutes, burning ammunition and fuel in coordinated passes designed to overwhelm the bomber's defensive fire. MacArthur flies Lucky Strike like a fighter, banking, diving, climbing, using the B-17's mass and momentum to spoil German gun solutions. But physics works against him. A fully loaded B-17 at 55,000 pounds can pull 2.5 Gs before structural failure. An FW-190 at 10,000 pounds can pull 6 Gs. The German fighters turn tighter, roll faster, and attack from angles the bombers can't defend. Lucky Strike takes hits across the right wing. cannon shells punch through fuel tanks, creating a mist of 100-octane gasoline that doesn't ignite only because the rounds pass through too fast to create spark. The ball turret gunner reports ammunition down to 200 rounds. The tail gunner's guns jam from frozen oil. 2 of the crippled B-17s take catastrophic damage. One loses the entire tail section to a 20-millimeter burst, spinning down through 16,000 feet with 11 men trapped inside. The other catches fire in the bomb bay, flames spreading to the wing roots, crew bailing out through forward hatches. MacArthur watches parachutes blossom against the German sky, white silk canopies drifting down toward prisoner-of-war camps. 22 men gone, but 3 damaged B-17s survive, their gunners working with Lucky Strike to create crossfire zones that force German fighters to break off attacks early. The FW-190s make one final pass, then turn east, fuel tanks empty, ammunition expended. MacArthur counts the cost. 2 B-17s destroyed, 33 Americans saved. But Lucky Strike is running on 3 engines, fuel gauge showing 620 gallons, and the English coast is still 280 miles away. The co-pilot runs the numbers. "Mac, we're not going to make it. We'll flame out 40 miles short of England." Here's where the engineering physics becomes critical. A B-17G carries 2,780 gallons of fuel in 9 self-sealing tanks, 4 in the wings, 1 in each engine nacelle. At maximum cruise power, 4 Wright Cyclone engines consume 200 gallons per hour each, total 800 gallons per hour, giving the bomber a 1,400-mile range at 180 miles per hour. But MacArthur is flying on 3 engines at reduced altitude, which changes everything. 3 engines at maximum continuous power consume 650 gallons per hour. Flight time from current position to English coast, 105 minutes at 160 miles per hour. Fuel required, 138 gallons. Fuel remaining, 620 gallons. Deficit, 518 gallons, representing 48 minutes of flight time. The B-17 will run dry 77 miles short of England, forcing a ditching in the English Channel where water temperature is 48 degrees Fahrenheit and survival time is 20 minutes before hypothermia causes unconsciousness. But MacArthur has one technical option the book doesn't cover. Extreme fuel conservation. He can shut down the number 1 engine, reducing consumption to 433 gallons per hour on 2 engines. Airspeed drops to 140 miles per hour. Flight time increases to 120 minutes. Fuel required increases to 866 gallons, still 246 gallons short. Unless he climbs. At 22,000 feet, air density drops by 35%, reducing drag and allowing the same airspeed on reduced power. Fuel consumption at altitude drops to 380 gallons per hour. Flight time, 120 minutes. Fuel required, 760 gallons. Fuel remaining, 620 gallons. Deficit, 140 gallons, representing 22 minutes of flight time. Still short, but only by 51 miles. If he can stretch the glide at the end, coast through the last 20 miles on windmilling props with engines dead, they might make English landfall. It's a gamble that requires perfect navigation, perfect weather, and perfect luck. And it starts with MacArthur shutting down a second engine, making Lucky Strike a 2-engine bomber escorting 3 cripples through hostile airspace on a wing and a prayer. MacArthur shuts down the number 1 engine at 11:47 hours, 40 miles inside German airspace. The Wright Cyclone coughs, sputters, and goes silent. Lucky Strike shudders as asymmetric thrust from the remaining 2 engines, numbers 3 and 4, tries to yaw the aircraft left. MacArthur compensates with full right rudder, trimming the aircraft to fly straight on reduced power. Airspeed drops through 140 miles per hour. The bomber wallows through the air like a wounded whale. Climb rate reduced to 300 feet per minute. MacArthur coaxes her upward, trading airspeed for altitude, climbing through 17,000, 18,000, 19,000 feet. The 3 damaged B-17s climb with him, their pilots understanding the fuel mathematics without being told. At 22,000 feet, the formation levels off. Temperature, minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Air density, 65% of sea level. Drag reduction, 35%. Fuel consumption, 380 gallons per hour across 2 engines. Lucky Strike maintains 145 miles per hour on 2-engine power. The airframe groaning under asymmetric loads. MacArthur's hands ache from holding right rudder pressure, 30 pounds of force against the yaw, sustained for the next 2 hours. The co-pilot takes over fuel management, switching tanks every 15 minutes to maintain balance, preventing the aircraft from becoming tail-heavy as fuel burns off. They cross the German border at 12:09 hours. Belgium passes below at 12:24 hours. The North Sea coastline appears ahead at 12:41 hours. Grey water, white caps, 110 miles from English landfall. Fuel remaining, 290 gallons. Required, 350 gallons. Still 60 gallons short, 12 miles short, but close enough that MacArthur starts believing they might actually make it. Then the number 3 engine begins losing oil pressure. The number 3 engine's oil pressure gauge drops from 60 psi to 40 psi to 20 psi in 30 seconds. Catastrophic oil leak caused by flak damage MacArthur didn't know existed. The right cyclone needs 25 psi minimum to prevent bearing seizure. At 15 psi, internal friction generates enough heat to weld pistons to cylinder walls. At 10 psi, the engine destroys itself from the inside. MacArthur watches the gauge hit 12 psi and knows he has maybe 90 seconds before the cyclone seizes completely, potentially catching fire and taking the entire wing with it. He has 3 options: keep the engine running and risk catastrophic fire, shut it down and fly on 1 engine, or ditch in the North Sea right now. Flying on 1 engine means asymmetric thrust so severe the aircraft becomes uncontrollable. The single running engine on the right wing will create yaw forces that exceed rudder authority, forcing the B-17 into an unrecoverable left spiral. Ditching means controlled water landing at 90 miles per hour, which the B-17 can theoretically survive, but water temperature is 48 degrees and rescue vessels are 40 miles away. Option 3 appears increasingly attractive. But MacArthur glances at the 3 damaged B-17's flying formation off his wing, 33 men who survived this far because he broke formation to protect them. If Lucky Strike ditches, those aircraft lose their escort and defensive firepower. They're 95 miles from England, close enough to taste it, and if he quits now, Luftwaffe fighters could still intercept and destroy them. The oil pressure gauge hits 8 psi. The cylinder head temperature climbs through 250 degrees Celsius. MacArthur makes his second regulation-violating decision of the day. He's going to run that engine until it explodes or they reach England, whichever comes first. He advances the throttle on number 4 engine to maximum power, 1,350 horsepower from a single right cyclone, asking 1 engine to do the work of 4. The B-17 shudders, metal groaning, but maintains 130 miles per hour, 78 miles to England, fuel for 60 miles, and 1 engine that's about to catch fire. At 13:18 hours, MacArthur sees the English coastline, white cliffs of Dover rising from grey water, the most beautiful sight in aviation history. Altitude, 18,000 feet. Fuel remaining, 85 gallons. Distance to Thorpe Abbotts, 68 miles. Required fuel at current consumption, 110 gallons. Still short. The number 3 engine seizes at 13:21 hours. The oil-starved Cyclone locks solid, propeller stopping instantly, creating massive asymmetric drag. MacArthur feathers the prop, reduces drag. But Lucky Strike is now a glider with one engine barely maintaining level flight. He shuts down number 4 to conserve the last fuel, trading engine power for glide distance. The B-17 descends at 400 feet per minute in silent glide, only the wind screaming past torn aluminum. Airspeed, 120 miles per hour. Glide ratio, 10.1, meaning 10 feet forward for every foot of altitude lost. At 18,000 feet altitude, maximum glide distance, 34 miles. Combined with 30 miles of powered flight remaining in the fuel. Tanks, total range, 64 miles. Thorpe Abbotts, 68 miles. 4 miles short. But MacArthur has one last trick. He noses Lucky Strike down, trading altitude for airspeed, increasing glide ratio to 12.1 by flying faster through denser air at lower altitude. The bomber descends through 15,000, 12,000, 10,000 feet. English countryside spreads below. Green fields, hedgerows, the familiar landscape of East Anglia. At 5,000 feet, MacArthur restarts number 4 engine on the last 40 gallons of fuel. The Cyclone coughs, catches, roars to life. He advances throttle to maximum power, coaxing one final burst of speed from the dying bomber. Thorpe Abbotts appears ahead, the runway, the control tower, the ambulances already racing toward the approach path. MacArthur extends landing gear at 800 feet, lines up on final approach at 110 miles per hour, and the number 4 engine dies 30 seconds before touchdown. Lucky Strike touches down at Thorpe Abbotts at 13:42 hours, all 4 engines dead, coasting on momentum alone. MacArthur stands on the brakes, tires smoking, and the bomber rolls to a stop 200 feet from the runway's end. Behind him, 3 damaged B-17s land safely, 33 crewmen alive because one pilot violated direct orders. But the celebration lasts exactly 4 hours. At 17:40 hours, MacArthur receives orders to report to the base commander. The court-martial convenes on November 20th, 1944. The charges: willful disobedience of tactical directives, endangering crew lives, breaking formation in combat. The verdict: guilty on all counts. Dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of pay, permanent mark on his service record. MacArthur doesn't appeal. He serves out the war in a supply depot in Scotland, never flies combat again, goes home to Iowa in 1946, and spends the next 77 years wondering if he made the right call. But in 2019, German aviation historian Klaus Hoffmann discovers Luftwaffe mission records in the Bundesarchiv, specifically radio intercepts from FW-190 pilots on November 18, 1944. The German pilots reported aborting their attack on 5 crippled B-17s due to intervention by a single escort bomber that engaged them with unexpected defensive fire and tactical maneuvering. Without that intervention, the FW-190s calculated they could have destroyed all 5 bombers. The intercepts confirm MacArthur's tactical assessment. The Stragglers would have died without escort. On April 12, 2023, the Air Force Board for Correction of Military Records reviews Hoffmann's evidence, declassified mission reports, and survivor testimony from the rescued crews. The verdict is overturned. MacArthur's discharge is upgraded to honorable. At 101 years old, he receives the Distinguished Flying Cross for extraordinary achievement in aerial flight and tactical decision-making under combat conditions that saved 33 American lives. The medal arrives by mail. MacArthur dies 6 months later, vindicated by history, physics, and the mathematics he calculated correctly 79 years ago at 22,000 feet over Germany. Final tally: 43 lives saved, 33 from the rescued bombers, plus 10 additional crewmen from 2 other stragglers that joined MacArthur's formation during the withdrawal. The Air Force now teaches his decision as a case study in tactical command judgment versus regulation compliance. Sometimes the right call is the one that gets you court-martialed. And sometimes it takes 79 years for the physics to prove you were right all along.